Hello, everyone. Welcome to Beyond Life Paranormal Podcast. I'm your host, Russell Reynolds, and we got a good show tonight. Before we get into it, just wanted to let everybody know that Holiday Magic is canceled. So if you had bought tickets to that, please reach out to Jen Jacobs to get your refunds. And I wanted to say thank you to everybody who did buy tickets to come out and see all of us. With that being said, the event is canceled in Sandusky, Ohio. Um, Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. I know some are probably still celebrating it. We just got back from a Thanksgiving dinner as well, so um, it was a pretty good one. We celebrated on Thursday with our cousins, and then with some dear friends that are like family to us, we went celebrated with them today. Um, which brings us to our show tonight. We're going to talk about a little bit of Thanksgiving and the paranormal. And there is paranormal that consists in Thanksgiving. There's some dark history, as many of you know. I know a lot of it's not in the history books, but many of your Native American tribes, your indigenous people, do not celebrate Thanksgiving. For them, it's a day of mourning, so they do not celebrate Thanksgiving. Um, some do and some don't. Um, so we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, um, with a little bit about the dark history of Thanksgiving. If you guys have any questions, feel free to post them up in the chat. Um, and yeah, we're going to get right into it. Make sure you're following us, like, subscribe on our YouTube. Um, so without further ado, let's get into the show. We are going to talk about what they call the spirits of the harvest for Thanksgiving. It's about hidden stories and folklore. Um, as you know, like the history books teach us in school about the Pilgrims and the Native Americans. But there is also stuff with the paranormal as well in Thanksgiving. So I'm gonna read a little bit of the history on it. And it says Spirits of the Harvest Thanksgiving, Spirits of the Harvest Thanksgiving's hidden ghost stories and folklore. While Thanksgiving today celebrates the arrival of the Pilgrims and their first successful harvest, life in the early colonies was fraught with hardship and loss. Disease, starvation, and brutal weather were commonplace, and the Pilgrims' survival was a tenuous delicate balance. In this environment, tales of spectral encounters and eerie occurrences were common. Ghost sightings among the early pilgrims. Many pilgrims believed that spirits of those who died in the harsh early winters would wander the colony, watching over their surviving family members or at times haunting those who had taken advantage of their death. Legend has it that during the first winters in Plymouth, settlers reported hearing whispers and footsteps echoing through the barren, darkened woods. Families huddled close, praying they would not see the restless souls who wandered the village at night. In Plymouth's early years, a string of illnesses and deaths ravaged a small settlement, leading to a common belief that their troubles were the result of unseen forces punishing them for entering this new land. These ghost stories added a sense of forbidden to the Thanksgiving feast itself, a time of both gratitude and uneasy contemplation of those who were no longer there to join them. Today, the town of Plymouth holds ghost tours throughout the fall season, preserving the mysterious atmosphere of those earlier settlers and the belief that the spirits of the past may still linger. And now we dive into the Native American myths. Native American myths in the fall season, the Wendigo, a haunting figure of Native American Thanksgiving folklore. The arrival of autumn and the celebration of the harvest also held spiritual meaning in many Native American cultures. Varied between tribes, but no common theme echoed. A connection between the living world and the spirit realm was especially potent during this season. The Wendigo and the spirits of the cold season. The Algonquin speaking tribes tell the Wendigo a malevolent spirit associated with the onset of winter and the starvation that could accompany it. The Wendigo embodies greed and irresistible, insatiable hunger, often appearing in times of scarcity. Though unrelated to Thanksgiving, its association with the colder months and the harvest season made it a spectral presence in the minds of early settlers, influencing how they prepared for the upcoming harsh winter. That's a little bit on the history of Thanksgiving, and here's what your Wendigo looks like. What the Native Americans were seeing around that time of Thanksgiving. Um, as you see, it's a big creature, kind of looks like a deer. Hey, Coach Fry, welcome in. And supposedly it preys on people. It's also cannibalistic, which is our next topic we were going to talk about tonight is the Wendigo, being he is associated with the Thanksgiving holiday. Um, so the Wendigo, very interesting creature, dates all the way back to Native American times, and it's many of the Native Americans believed it. It's a mythological creature or evil spirit originating from Algonquin folklore. The concept of the Wendigo has been widely used in literature and other works of art, such as social commentary and horror fiction. The Wendigo is often said to be a malevolent spirit, sometimes depicted as a creature with human like characteristics who may possess human beings. It is said to cause its victims a feeling of insatiable hunger, the desire to eat other humans, and the propensity to commit murder. In some representations, the Wendigo is described as a giant humanoid with a heart of ice who approaches signaled by a foul stench or sudden unseasonable chill. In modern psychiatry, the disorder known as Wendigo psychosis is characterized by symptoms such as intense craving for human flesh and fear of becoming a cannibal. Wendigo psychosis is described as a cultural bound syndrome. In the First Nations community, symptoms such as insatiable greed or destruction of the environment are also thought to be symptoms of Wendigo psychosis. The Washuj is a similar being that appears in legends of the Athabascan people of the Northwest Pacific Coast. It too is cannibalistic, however, it is characterized as an enlightened with ancestral insights. Um, etymology, the complementary English word for Wendigo, is a loan word from multiple origins. It is partially a borrowing from Cree and partially a borrowing from OGB, both Algonquin language, comparable forms to be found in English as early as 1714, and they also called it a whitigo. The form of Wendigo was popularized in English language by Algernon Blackwood, who in 1910 published a novella with his name. The word has been reconstructed in Porto Alegre as Wininetko Wa, with the potential meaning owl. Folklore: the Wendigo is part of the traditional belief system of a number of Algonquin speaking people, including the Ojibwe and the Salatuks and the Cree, the Napasapi, and the Innu. Although descriptions can vary somewhat, common to all these cultures is the view that the Wendigo is malevolent, cannibalistic supernatural being. They were strongly associated with the North winter cold, famine, and starvation. Basil H. Johnson of the OGB, teacher and scholar from Ontario, describes a Wendigo. The Wendigo was a gaunt to the point of emaciation. Its desiccated skin pulled tightly over its bones, with its bones pushing out against its skin, its complexion the ash gray of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into their sockets. The Wendigo looked like a gaunt skeleton recently disinterred from the grave. What lips it had were tattered and bloody. Unclean and suffering from suppuration of the flesh, the Wendigo gave off a strange and eerie odor of decay and decomposition, of death and corruption. In the OGB, Eastern Cree, West Main Swampy Cree, Naskapi, and the Innu lures, Wendigos are often described as giants that are many times larger than human beings, and characteristic absent from myths and other Algonquin cultures. Whenever the Wendigo ate another person, it would grow in proportion to the meal it just ate, so it could never be full. Therefore, Wendigos are portrayed in simultaneously gluttons and extremely thin due to starvation. The Wendigo is seen as an embodiment and gluttony, greed, and excess, never satisfied after killing and consuming one person. They are constantly searching for new victims. A Wendigo need not lose human powers of cognition or speech, and some depictions may clearly communicate with its prospective victims or even threaten or taunt them. A specimen of folk story collected in the early 20th century by Loti Chicagua Mardson, an ethnographer of the Chippewas of Rama First Nation, in which the Wendigo also exhibits tool use, an ability to survive partial dismemberment, and autocannibalism. And the research reads: one time long ago, a big Wendigo stole an Indian boy, but the boy was too thin, so the Wendigo didn't eat him up right away, but he traveled with the Indian boy, waiting for him till he got fat. The Wendigo had a knife, and he'd cut the boy on the hand to see if he was fat enough to eat. But the boy told the Indians that the Wendigo was never near them, and showed them his hand where the Wendigo had cut him to see if he was fat enough to eat. They heard the Wendigo calling the boy. He said to the boy, "Hurry up, don't tell lies to those Indians." All of these Indians went to where the Wendigo was and cut off his legs. They went back again to see if he was dead. He wasn't dead. He was eating the juice marrow from the inside of the bones of his legs that were cut off. The Indians asked the Wendigo if there was any fat on them. He said, "You bet there is. I've eaten lots of Indians. No wonder they are fat." The Indians then killed him and cut him into pieces. This was the end of the giant Wendigo. Human cannibalism: in some traditions, humans overpowered by greed could turn into Wendigos. The myth thus served as method of encouraging cooperation and moderation. Other sources say Wendigos were created when a human resorted to cannibalism to survive. Humans could also turn into Wendigos by being in contact with them for too long. Taboo reinforcement ceremonies among the Essebone, the Cree, And the OGB, the statural ceremonial dance, is sometimes performed during times of famine to reinforce the seriousness of the Wendigo's taboo. The ceremony known as the Wendy, I wouldn't can't pronounce this. This is a big Native American word. It's a Wende Gukuzan ni Moen, was performed during times of famine and involved wearing masks and dancing backwards around a drum. The last known Wendigo ceremony conducted in the United States was at Lake Wendigo of Star Island of Cass Lake within the Leech Lake Indian Reservation in northern Minnesota. Psychosis in historical accounts, a retroactively diagnosed Wendigo psychosis, it has been reported that humans became possessed by the Wendigo spirit after being in a situation of needing food and having no other choice besides cannibalism. In 1661, the Jesuit relations reported, and I'll read you guys a translation. It's all in a different language. The translation: what caused us greater concern was the news that met us upon entering the lake, namely that the men deputed by our conductor for the purpose of summoning the nations of the North Sea and assigning them a rendezvous where they were to await our coming had met their death the previous winter in a very strange manner. Those poor men, according to the report given us, were seized with the alignment unknown to us, but not very unusual among the people we were seeking. They are affiliated with neither lunacy, hypochondria, nor frenzy, but have a combination of all these species of disease which affects their imaginations and cause them a more than canine hunger. This makes it so ravenous for human flesh that they pounce upon women, children, and even upon men like veritable werewolves and devour them ferociously without being able to appease or glut their appetite over seeking fresh prey. And the more greedily, the more they eat. These linemen attacked our deputies, and as death, the sole remedy among those simple people for checking such acts of murder, were slain in order to stay the course of their madness. Although in many recorded cases of Wendigo psychosis, the individual has been killed to prevent cannibalism from resulting, some Cree folklore recommends treatment by ingestion of fatty animal meats or drinking animal grease. Those treated may sometimes vomit ice as part of the curing process. One of the more famous cases of Wendigo psychosis reported involved a Plains Cree trapper from Alberta named Swift Runner. During the winter of 1878, Swift Runner and his family were starving, and his eldest son died. 25 miles away from emergency food supplies at a Hudson Bay Company post, Swift Runner butchered and ate his wife and 5 remaining children, giving that he resorted to cannibalism so near to food supplies and that he killed and consumed the remains of all those present. It was revealed that Swift Runner was not a case of pure cannibalism as a last resort to avoid starvation, but rather of a man with Wendigo psychosis. He eventually confessed and was executed by the authorities at Fort Saskatchewan. Another well known case involving Wendigo psychosis was that of Jack Fiddler, the Oji Cree chief and medicine man known for his powers at defeating Wendigos. In some cases, this entailed killing people with Wendigo psychosis. As a result, in 1907, Fiddler and his brother Joseph were arrested by the Canadian authorities for homicide. Jack committed suicide, but Joseph was tried and sentenced to life in prison. He ultimately was granted a pardon, but died 3 days later in jail before receiving the news of his pardon. Fascination with Wendigo psychosis among Western Ethnographers and psychologists and anthropologists led to a hotly debated controversy in the 1980s over the historically of this phenomenon. Some researchers argued that essentially Wendigo psychosis was a fabrication, the result of native anthropologists taking stories related to them at face value with observation. Others have pointed to a number of credible eyewitnesses accounts, both by Angolians and others, as evidence that Wendigo psychosis was a factual historical phenomenon. The frequency of Wendigo psychosis cases decreased sharply in the 20th century. Rel Algonian people came into greater and greater contact with European ideologies and more sedentary, less rural lifestyles. In his 2004 Tresty Revenge of the Wendigo on Disorders and Treatments of Behavior Health Industry in the United States, Canada, there are peculiar to indigenous people, James James B. Waldron wrote. No actual cases of Wendigo psychosis have ever been studied, and Lou Morano's scathing critique in 1985 should have killed off the cannibal monster within psychiatric annuals. The Wendigo, however, continues to seek revenge for this attempted scholarly execution by periodically duping unsuspecting passerbys like psychiatrists into believing that Wendigo psychosis not only exists, but that psychiatrists could conceivably encounter a patient suffering from this disorder in his or her practice today. Wendigo psychosis may well be the most perfect example of the construction of the aboriginal mental disorder by the scholarly professions, and its persistence and dramatically underscores how constructions of the aboriginal by these professions have, like Frankenstein's monster, taken on a life of their own. The 10th revision of the International Statistical Classification of Diseases and Related Health Problems classifies Wendigo as a cultural specific disorder, describing it as a rare historic accounts of cannibalistic obsessions. Symptoms include depression, homicidal, suicidal thoughts, and a delusional compulsive with to eat human flesh. Some controversial new studies question the syndrome legitimacy, claiming cases were actually a product of hostile accusations invented to justify the victim's ostracism or execution. Some metal, vitamin, and oleoelement deficiencies are linked to psychosis like conditions. Wendigo could be a folk elaboration of some near starvation mental disorders. As a concept or metaphor, in addition to denoting the cannibalistic monster from certain traditional folklore, some Native Americans also understand the Wendigo conceptually as a concept. The Wendigo can apply to any person, idea, or movement affected by corrosive drive toward self, organizing, greed, and excessive consumption traits that sow disharmony and destruction if left unchecked. Ojibwe scholar Brady DeSante asserts that the Wendigo can be understood as a marker indicating a person in balance both internationally and to a larger community of humans and spiritual beings around them. Out of the equilibrium, the estranged by their communities, individuals thought to be afflicted by the Wendigo spirit unravel and destroy the ecological balance around them. The Chippewa author Louise Hendricks' novel, The Roundhouse, winner of the National Book Award, depicts a situation where an individual person becomes a Wendigo. The novel describes its primary antagonist, a rapist whose violent crimes desecrate a sacred site, as a Wendigo who must be killed because he threatens the reservation's safety. In addition to characterizing individual people who exhibit destructive tendencies, the Wendigo can also describe movements and events with similar negative effects. According to Professor Chris Shedler, the figure of the Wendigo represents consuming forms of exclusion and assimilation through which groups dominate other groups. This application allows Native Americans to describe colonialism and its agents as Wendigos, since the process of the colonialism ejected natives from their land and threw the natural world out of balance. DeSante points to the 1999 horror film Ravenish as an illustration of this argument, equating the cannibal monster to American colonialism and Manifest Destiny. This movie features a character who articulates that expansion brings displacement to the destruction as side effects, explaining that Manifest Destiny and Western expansion will bring thousands of gold hungry Americans over the mountains in a search for new lives. This country is seeking to be whole, stretching out its arms and consuming all it can, and we merely follow. As a concept, the Wendigo can be applied to situations other than some Native American European relations. It can serve as a metaphor explaining any pattern of domination by which groups can subject and dominate or violently destroy and displace. Joe Lockhart, English professor of Arizona State University, argues that Wendigos are agents of social cannibalism who know no provincial or national borders. All human cultures have been visited by a shape shifting Wendigo. These visitations speak to the irresistibly of human experience. Nationally identity is irrelevant to this borderless horror. Lockhart's idea explains that Wendigos are an expression of a dark aspect of human nature, a drive towards greed, consumption, and disregard for other life and pursuit of self arrangement. Romantic scholar and documentarian Emily Zarka, also a professor at Arizona State University, observes that two commonalities among the indigenous cultures of the Algonquin language family speakers are that they are situated in climes where harsh winters are frequent and may be accompanied by starvation. She states that the Wendigo symbolically represents three major concepts. It is the incarceration of winter, embodiment of hunger, and the personification of selfishness. In pop culture, a person dressed as a Wendigo character from the television series Hannibal at Fan Expo 2015. And there's been several books and movies on the Wendigos. And that's a little bit about the Wendigo. You'll never go deer hunting again. Well, if you remember back then with the colonial, the Native Americans didn't really want them hunting either. So, um, and I mean, it's not just those Native Americans that seen it. I mean, other people are seeing it as well. Um, here's another one to pond on. Do you guys remember the movie Jeremiah Johnson that Robert Redford played the Mountain Man? And remember, the crow had killed his family because he desecrated sacred ground by leading them people through it to that burial ground. And the true story on Jeremiah Johnson is they called him Liver Eating Johnson. He would kill the Crow Indians to get revenge for killing his family, and he would actually eat their liver, so he got the nickname Liver Eating Johnson. So, and he lived up in the mountains, so what's not saying that maybe he, after that, he went crazy after he come back and found his family dead? What making you think that he didn't get that Wendigo psychosis, and also took on the spirit of a Wendigo, which he finally came down out of the mountains, and he actually died in California in a nursing home. So that's a little bit about that with the Wendigo. I mean, it's an interesting creature. I mean, I deer hunt. I've never experienced one of them in the woods or anything like that. I mean, I grew up in the Catskill Mountains, so I mean, I deer hunted in the snow and up there and through the winter, even here in Missouri. And you don't hear 'em. A lot of people don't believe they're real either, too. Um, and there's many Native Americans that believe they are real. So, I mean, what's saying that they're not gonna? I'm not saying you're never gonna see one, but you never know. I mean, if they showed up there at Plymouth, where the Pilgrims were, and then their little dark history they got going on, the Pilgrims do. I mean, of the earlier settlers dying and stuff like that, and then with the Native Americans, and they were believing it back then too with the colonists that the Wendigo was also involved too there around that time. Um, so what's saying about that as well? So, and that's a little bit also why the Native American. Sorry, guys, my mic cut out. Today we talk about this darker stuff, and I always have equipment issues when it does. Yeah, I mean they've got their issues with a bunch of sick deer as well. I mean they with the chronic wasting disease. Missouri's got that CWD stuff, and we've had a lot of sick deer also. I mean, with hemorrhage disease and blue tongue, they presumably up north or anywhere. They've been popping up everywhere. I mean, them Wendigos have. I mean, you hear them up in Canada. I've heard stuff west and stuff also with the Wendigos. So, I mean, who knows? I mean, with them, but we're gonna move on to our to another one. Um, and this happened on Thanksgiving Day. Um, it was a tragic accident with a railroad car. Um, Before we get into that, I'll show you my cool background.
Oh, it took me off the stage, which was weird. I don't know why I did that, but were you able to hear anything, Jerry? What I just read? StreamYard did a whole bunch of changes, so it's been acting up, which I don't know why it took me off the stage, but um, I'll go over that again in case something messed up because StreamYard is acting up a little bit tonight. So I'm gonna repeat this. On Thanksgiving Day in 1902, a southbound train near Genevieve, New York, approaching the Marsh Bridge. As it did, the engineer and firemen on board heard a piercing scream. When they looked up, they saw a white figure standing on the east of the bridge, frantically waving its arms. Alarmed, the engineer brought the train to a stop. Just as he did, another scream rang out, and the phantom figure vanished before their eyes. The two men climbed down and searched the tracks surrounding area for any sign of the figure or the source of the cries. Nothing. The tracks were clear and there was no trace of anyone nearby. As they started across the bridge, they heard the scream once more, final chilling wail before silence fell. When the train pulled into the station, the shaken men described their experience to fellow railroad workers. The workers then told them about a deadly accident that occurred on the same bridge years earlier. A train had plunged off the bridge, killing the engineer and fireman. According to the story, the quicksand swallowed the fireman's body and no one ever recovered it. Since then, witnesses have reported seeing a shrieking phantom on the bridge every year around Thanksgiving. Surprisingly, people began calling it the Thanksgiving Ghost. This area was more than local folklore. It was reported in newspapers across the country, including Salt Lake Telegram on December 4th, 1902, but was there any truth to the legend? Did any of this really happen? Tracking down the truth behind the story wasn't easy. There was no clear record of the accident on Thanksgiving, nor one in the years leading up to 1902 that exactly matched the description. However, on March 29, 1873, a train left Syracuse at 7:45 p.m., headed towards Rochester on the Auburn Road within half a mile of Genevieve. The train ran into a washed-out bridge over Marsh Creek, where floodwaters had destroyed the supports. The locomotive, tender, baggage car plunged into the raging waters below, vanishing beneath the surface. A grim recovery. Amazingly, the passenger cars remained on the tracks, preventing further catastrophe, but for the men in the engine, there was no escape. Violent current tore through the wreckage, making any immediate rescue efforts impossible. A grim recovery. The search for the missing crew was delayed due to the sheer force of the floodwaters and dangerous debris floating in the creek. It wasn't until the following day, March 30th, that the body of the engineer, Ignatius Belty, was recovered near the wreck. Fireman Augustus Sipple met an even more unsettling fate. Rescuers searched the crash site but found no trace of his body. Flood swept him far downstream, and searchers didn't discover his remains until March 31st, far from the wreck. They scoured the floodwaters for 2 days before finally locating him. The powerful currents had made immediate recovery impossible. By that time, they found both men exposure and severely damaged their remains, such as tragic, a violent, and easily fueled ghostly tales. Belty's tragic death left a deep impact on his community. His funeral at St. Joseph's Church drew a large crowd, including members of the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and St. Alphonse Society, a testament to the respect he commanded. Some say his untimely death, along with that of Fireman Sipples, gave rise to the legend of the Thanksgiving ghost of Marsh Bridge, a spectral warning of the dangers that once lurked along the tracks. The railroad's role in lawsuit. This wasn't just a freak accident. In the aftermath, both families sued the railroad for negligence, arguing that the bridge had been in a dangerous state before the flood took it down. The court found the railroad liable and awarded compensation to both families. The wreck sent shockwaves to the Genovia community as details emerged about the bridge's weakened state before the flood. Public outcry grew. The railroad was heavily criticized, reinforcing the idea that the ghost story may have been less about the supernatural and more about reminding railroad men of dangers of the poor track maintenance. For years to come, railroad workers crossing Marsh Bridge may have whispered about the two men who perished there, warning new hires keep their eyes and ears open. How did this connect to the Thanksgiving ghost? There are reports linking the March 1873 accident directly to Thanksgiving, so why did the story evolve that way? People may have misremembered the wreck's anniversary over time, since the disaster happened in late March. A transitional season, storytellers may have shifted it to another familiar marker, Thanksgiving. Folklore often changes this way, especially when people pass stories down orally instead of recording them in history. Another theory suggests railroad workers kept the story alive as a cautionary tale during their long, grueling holiday shifts. Thanksgiving marked the time of heavy travel, when workers needed to stay especially vigilant on the tracks. Linking the ghost to Thanksgiving reinforced the idea that this was a dangerous season for train crews. This connection helped ensure that the legend remained relevant across generations, or maybe, just maybe, the spirits of Engineer Balti and Fireman Sipple never truly left forever, warning those who cross the Marsh Bridge to be careful where they tread. Final thoughts: the Thanksgiving ghost of Marsh Bridge may not have happened as reported in 1902, but it's rooted in real tragedy, whether a spectral warning or a reminder of railroad dangers. The legend of Marsh Bridge continues to echo through history. But perhaps there's another reason why Balti and Sippel's spirits might linger. Even in death, Balti's journey was troubled. At his funeral, burial was delayed due to a rule limiting the number of carriages allowed in the cemetery. When the sextons refused to help, mourners had to lower the coffin and fill the grave without his assistance. Some might say this kind of disrespect in death is exactly the kind of thing that keeps spirits from resting. Marsh Bridge, built 1960, Steve Boucher, Finger Lakes Times. What do you think? Was this just an urban legend inspired by a real disaster, or could something truly supernatural be lingering at Marsh Bridge? Hey, Richie, welcome in. So I do have, this is another current picture of Marsh Bridge right there, where the tragedy did happen. Now, they say they're seeing them around Thanksgiving. There's a theory to that. Around this time of year, the veil gets thinner. So we start seeing a lot more spirits around this time of year because of the full moons and the energy shift with the veil being thin. So maybe at the time they could gain energy to manifest themselves, and it's also like a warning that, hey, you need to be careful with this bridge, that we met our end here. So that's why they probably show themselves as on Thanksgiving as a Thanksgiving ghost. I need to find if there's any investigators watching that actually went out and checked out this legend. Email me at beyondlifeparanormalresearch@gmail.com, and I'd like to have you on the show and we can talk more about this if you actually went out there and investigated this legend. See what you guys, as far as evidence captured. I mean, that'd be awesome to check it out and see what's going on with it. Richie, since you just tuned in, we are talking about the Thanksgiving ghost and some of the hauntings that happen around Thanksgiving, like the Pilgrim Harvest and with the Native Americans, and we were also talking about the Wendigo, which is also in. With you being Native American, you should know this creature. He's part of the Native American folklore of it being a cannibalistic creature. And they've also, with the Wendigo psychosis. And this was an actual, here is the actual picture of the crash where the bridge had collapsed from the floodwaters. And so that's showing all the people out there where that train had went off the tracks and down in and collapsed down in. And back then you'd hear that quite a bit. A lot of train crashes. Missouri's got it. There's Northeast Missouri. There's a old ghost town up there, and there's a tunnel that goes into the town up there. And supposedly the legend is that there was a train that derailed there and crashed, and a girl got decapitated, and she is known to haunt the tunnel there. And then, I mean, you'll hear also ghost trains. Like I was deer hunting last weekend with my cousins, and you could hear this train, and it was close. Now, the nearest train is 5 miles away. This train was actually sound like it was right on top of us when we were down in the woods hunting. And then you would hear it faintly during the day. It would stop for quite a while, and then you would hear it faintly during the day. But then when it started getting towards dark again, it would get even louder, like the train was right there on top of you. And all you wouldn't hear how the train wheels would go on the tracks. You would just hear the train horn, and it was one of the old style locomotive train horns, which was neat. And my cousin George grew up in that area, so he was telling me about that story about the ghost train. And they've heard that story from kids. On 3rd Street, Cameron, hear a train whistle frequently and went by. Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one too, yeah, as well in Cameron. And this is out in Jamesport, Missouri, where we were hearing that train horn, which is pretty interesting. And George was telling me the story about it when we were deer hunting last Saturday. And so a lot of it's like residual. I'm sure if you go out here to Marsh Bridge, I'm sure if there is any truth into the haunting out there, I wouldn't doubt you probably hear ghost trains coming through there, because I mean it's not a railroad bridge anymore. It's a walking bridge now. So you may hear something going on out there. If I ever get back east again, I'll probably take a ride out there and go check it out. See what I can pick up out there. And wonder if the tracks in Jamesport were the same. Probably. I mean, they're all connected. I mean, you got the One's in Breckenridge here that travel out there. I mean, I actually, where I live, I still have the old railroad telegraph poles out in my field and stuff from back when the train went through. And the old railroad bed, the railroad tracks are right up where the sawmill is. That's the old railroad station up there. And then it traveled right through Davies County, through Nettleton area, out that way. So, and then through Hamilton. So it probably did head through Cameron as well. And the old tracks aren't there anymore here in Breckenridge. It's all grown up now, but you can still see the remnants of it on the properties here. Old Rock Island Railroad went through my property. Yeah. I mean, that's like Gettysburg, the battlefield there. They had railroad that went through there. That's how they used to transport the soldiers in and out. Just between Devil's Den and Little Round Top. So it's not uncommon that they went through there. And where my house sits, I did some research on that with plat maps, and it ended up being, my place ended up being an old cattle farm and cattle company. So that would make sense. The train would come near there because they used to put the cattle on the train and ship them off. And with this also being an old military town, so, but that's a little bit about that with the Marsh Bridge and stuff like that. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to throw them up in the chat. Like I said, our Sandusky event in Ohio has been canceled. Anybody who bought tickets, we appreciate it. Reach out to Jen Jacobs for your refund. And I know there was a bunch coming to see us, and I know we're kind of disappointed about it too. But we are booked for several next year. So you'll be able to still get to see us. Next year's supposed to be pretty busy for us again, so we got a lot of stuff planned out for next year. Now that we're kind of slowing down a little bit, I'll be able to finish my book up. And stay tuned. I got merch coming out soon, so you'll be able to, if you want to buy a shirt, you'll be able to purchase shirts. So be on the lookout for that. I'll be putting stuff together this winter. Anything local next year? Caney, Kansas is the closest one, as I know of right now, but something could come up local. I mean, we usually start getting calls for that about March or April. With anybody that's booking us for events, since we're the only family besides my cousin John Zaffis that are on the road of the Warrens. We are waiting to hear back. We may be doing something in Kansas City, but that won't be until August. So I'm waiting to hear details on that when it comes about. But I know September definite in Caney, Kansas. October next year we are doing Legends and Squatches, which that one's in Indiana. Um, we'll be out there. Also, my buddy Brandon Cooper from Supernatural Inc. He'll be out there, which many of you know him as the Shaman. A lot of people, we like to pick on him, call him the Gnome, but he will also be out there as well. And we'll probably hear some more starting next year, hopefully. I've got some more projects in the works also. Some of my close friends know about it. I'm not spilling the beans yet. I'm getting everything laid out for it. But this one's going to be a pretty good one, pretty good project that I got going on. And then working on the movies, I've already, Hell in the Woods, big horror movie, that's pretty much done. I'm just doing the scenes now, the screenplay for it. I've already did the blueprint, and I'm doing the scripts for it. I've already written two other movies, these are more supernatural movies, paranormal. One's kind of based on my experience at 6 years old, and then I added my own plot twist to it. So, you'll be able to check that out. So, I'm working on with the film crews and stuff like that, getting somebody that's interested in filming it. So, and yours truly is going to star in all of them. So, um, but yeah, just Jerry, all I can say is just keep an eye on our page. I'll be posting them when we get them. Like I said, follow me on my main page, my group page, which is Beyond Life Paranormal Research Missouri, Cold Spotters Missouri on Facebook. I know we got some stuff planned with Cold Spotters also next year. So, and I know we've got some stuff planned with Cold Spotters Texas next year too. Some investigations probably in November. So we're in talks with them. We were supposed to do it this year, and then something came up on their end, so we're planning it next year. I know we're planning on some stuff with Outlaw Paranormal as well in Tennessee. So I know we're going to Connecticut next year as well to go see family and probably check out some local haunts there and check out the new Warren's Occult Museum because the artifacts are getting moved to a big museum next year. So we're looking forward to go see all that, and so that'll be also good. That's about it for what we got going on this year. We're still going out to do a couple residential cases that we got booked. So that'll keep us busy probably through January, and then the weather kind of slow us down. We're already getting snow here in Missouri, so it snowed today, but here where I live, it's all gone. So, but calling for more snow Monday. So, I know we're supposed to do some Bigfoot researching with my buddy Carter, and I know Red Dirt Cryptids. We're talking about probably having us out on a Bigfoot expedition with them. They want to try out some paranormal gear on their research for Bigfoot, so that'll also be awesome too. And I just got reading a report from 2021, not too far from where I live. A Bigfoot was heard howling at 3:30 in the morning, and they just confirmed it on the BFRO page. So if it sounds off again, we may go out there to check that out. I know exactly where they were talking about, so I've been out there. But so we're gonna get ready to wrap up here for the night. I said I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving and had time with their families and enjoyed it. Like I said, we were with our family, our cousins on Thanksgiving, and then we just went to another dinner tonight with some good friends of ours at their house and had Thanksgiving with them. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and end the show. Remember, if you're being bullied in the paranormal field, you do have a voice. Nobody's better than anybody in this field. We're all the same after the same common goal. There's no reason to bully and belittle anybody and trash talk anybody. So if you get a new investigator, teach them. Don't bash them. The only wrong way of investigating is provoking. That's the only wrong way of paranormal investigating. Other than that, it's all thinking outside the box. That's why none of us are professionals. So with that being said, everybody have a good night, and we will see you next weekend. We should be back on schedule next weekend at 8 o'clock on Saturday. So stay tuned for that, and we will see you next week. Same time, same channel. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight. Hope you found some of this information pretty cool, some of the history on it, some of the history that they don't teach you in school about Thanksgiving. So, and you got to hear the darker side of it too, with the Wendigo and some of the ghosts that the colonists had to deal with, and the Native Americans back then. So with that being said, everybody, God bless, have a good night, and see you all next week. Same time, same channel. Stay safe out there. And we will see you next week. Have a good night.